I am Planta on the line in Vancouver, British Columbia at TheCommentary.ca. Jeremiah Hayes joins me now. His new film, which he directed, wrote, co-produced, shot, and edited, Dear Audrey, is currently available for streaming as part of the Doxa Documentary Film Festival. You have until this Saturday, the 15th of May, to get tickets and stream it online. The film follows the filmmaker Martin Duckworth as he narrates his own life story to Jeremiah's camera, as it also chronicles his caring of his wife, the photographer and artist Audrey Shermer, after her diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. Duckworth is also caring for an adult daughter who has autism. His commitment and love for both comes through as we see him navigate daily life in and around his Montreal home. I'll ask Jeremiah about Duckworth's work as a filmmaker, which he reveals over the course of the film. I'll ask him about the various techniques he as a filmmaker employs, like animation, in telling the story. The film is very moving. I enjoyed it a lot and bawled a couple of times. While we all wish for ourselves to be loved and cared for, you see in the movie, hopefully learn from Duckworth as to how to love and care for another person. Jeremiah Hayes is an award-winning film director, writer, and editor. He received the Gemini Award in 2010 for co-directing the documentary Real Engine, which won other awards, including a Peabody. He received a Canadian Screen Award for editing the 2017 award-winning documentary Rumble, The Indians Who Rocked the World. The website dearaudrey.ca will have information on how to see the movie, as well as has resources on Alzheimer's, video clips, as well as Audrey Shermer's photos. I spoke to Jeremiah last week just before a theatrical screening of the film as part of Doxa. It is a Cineflex Media and National Film Board of Canada co-production. Please welcome to the Planta Online program, Jeremiah Hayes. Mr. Hayes, good morning.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. As I was telling you just before we started how much I enjoyed the film. Let's begin with Martin Duckworth. When did you first meet him?
I met him in 1991 at the National Film Board of Canada. It was my first job after film school, and I was assistant editor on a film he was directing called Peacekeeper at War. And so, I met him in 91, and we kept in touch ever since, but we started filming Dear Audrey in 2016.
I see.
And that's when we really became close friends.
I see. For people listening to us, as a filmmaker, as a cinematographer, how is Duckworth's work being viewed?
Well, he's very respected in Canada, and he's very well known, especially in Quebec and in Montreal.
Yeah.
So, he's done 30 films as a director and 100 films as a cameraman.
I see.
So, quite prolific.
You have the marvelous gift in the film of working with such great visuals. I mean, his own films, her photos, home movies as well. They add so much to the beautiful work that you shot yourself. In terms of his films that we see in your movie, did he have a say as to how you would use those films, say?
No, he was amazingly open to whatever I wanted to do, and I think it's partly because he's a filmmaker and he respects the creative process. But I shot everything. It took me 4 years to shoot, and then I started editing on my own. And whenever I would have some scenes ready, I would show it to him first, because I wanted him to put a stamp of approval, make sure I wasn't getting anything wrong, or if there was nothing embarrassing, moments that he didn't want to show public. So
that's a marvelous thing of the film, is that you take us into these terribly intimate moments, not just both Duckworth and Audrey, obviously, as they're going through life, and she's contending with Alzheimer's, but even when you're talking to him about things in his past or things that have happened to him. It's such he bears himself literally to your camera, and I'm wondering how do you develop that sort of a relationship with a subject, so that they can do that on film, especially.
Well, I think it's partly Martin's character. He's an incredibly authentic, open, and kind man. But we did develop a close bond and friendship throughout the filmmaking process. So I would go over there, just me and the camera, no crew, and I wanted it to be as small a footprint as a filmmaker as possible so that I would be able to get those moments, because I find sometimes when you have a lot of crew and equipment around, it can impede on getting the moment and the intimacy. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I approached it, is to really film it like I was filming a home movie and not really worry about the technical side of things. That being said, I did buy a camera that is very good in low light and very small, but it has, at the same time, very high quality professional camera. So it was able to do a lot in the circumstances in his apartment, which is often dark, and I didn't need to set up lights. So that's another thing that allowed me the freedom to just follow the moment and not worry about the technical side of things.
There's some beautiful shots near the beginning of the film where Martin's playing at the piano, and Audrey's listening, and you have your camera pointed at her. I don't know where she was in the progression of Alzheimer's. Was she looking at you, or was she looking at the camera?
She was looking at me, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years after her diagnosis, but it was the first scene I filmed with Martin and Audrey. Originally, I had asked Martin if I could make a film about his life and him caring for Audrey, but he said no, because he thought, well, my life, I have nothing really important to say about my life. But
Wow.
I said, yeah, I know. But I said, well, can I just film that one scene?
Yeah.
Because I heard that he plays the piano to help her sleep at night. And so he said yes, and then, yeah, it went well after that. It was I filmed maybe once or twice a month for the next 4 years after that.
In the scene that I've just described, for people listening to us, she's listening to him play, and she's smiling at you, and she's enjoying being in that moment, and her smile is just so infectious and just lovely, and it captures so much of who she was or is.
Yeah.
And I just think it's just a wonderful way to introduce us to her, especially.
Yeah, she was like that. And, you know, Martin at one point in the film talks about how he goes to a group therapy session for spouses of people who have Alzheimer's. And he said that everyone else in the group complained that their partner is difficult and irritable, which is common, but not a rule when it comes to people with Alzheimer's. And Audrey never had that for whatever reason, you know. And she was always just very kind and sweet, and
just a lovely person. By the way, the animation that you employ in the film, did Duckworth see that before? I'm thinking of the depiction of the car crash, for example. Did he see that before it ended up in the film, and did he tell you, well, yeah, that's accurate or not, or?
No, because whenever I had a frame, like a bit of animation, because animation is really complicated to produce and time-consuming, so I did show him things when I had rough drafts, and he was very happy with everything. I had to tell him that, this is not reality, because the animation was meant to be a diversion from reality, sort of a dreamlike acid trip sequence that would periodically drop throughout the film. And the intention was to really contrast with the rest of the film in style and mood. I think he understood that it wasn't meant to be accurate in terms of what actually happened. But, yeah, he was always very happy with the animation.
Yeah. It's quite moving to watch. I'm thinking of the scene in the doorway, for example. It adds so much to them telling us, or him telling us about the situation itself, because it adds something to his voice, to his story, you know?
Yeah, like a memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt I really wanted to do animation, but I wasn't sure we could afford it because it's just so expensive.
I'll bet, yeah.
But we managed to get a great animator named Josh Charette, and he gave his heart and soul to the project and did it for less. And so we really were lucky to have that team behind us. The process took about a year to get it all done, and it involved filming actors and doing rotoscoping, which you take an actor and you draw frame by frame, like video footage, draw frame by frame over it. The actors would be filmed like in a blank room, and then we would cut them into a 3D animated world. Because in 3D you can change things and move things around and add a chair or whatever you wanted to add very cheap and easily. Then, once we're happy with the entire shot or the entire animation, we would give it to an artist. And then an artist would draw frame by frame to bring it back down to 2D. We wanted that very, black and white, charcoal, hand-drawn look to be really down to earth and gritty.
That's fascinating, because I just assumed that, it was somebody drawing. I had no idea that the various elements were part of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that whole process partly was to save time and money.
Yeah.
But in my case, it was very good as a director to have the freedom to approve things at every step. Because if it was just drawn frame by frame from the beginning, once, say, 5-second shot was drawn, it would be very hard to change anything. But if we could do it in real life with actors and then change it again in 3D, we can make lots of adjustments. Then give it to the artist to draw only after everything is locked and very approved, So
it adds to how remarkable the film is. His is such a fascinating life. Hers is as well. There's so many stories in your film, but at the heart of the film is the culmination of these 46 years together and him caring for her. As I was watching the film, Jeremiah, I thought to myself, this is what we'd like for ourselves, to be cared for or to care for somebody else.
Exactly.
In that situation, but not a lot of us do that. And so when you when you set out to make the film, was there a part of you that wanted to depict this part of love, essentially?
Yeah, I knew that the film had a lot going for it in the sense that we could draw from Martin and Audrey's life, and which is quite epic, and their art and all the things they've done.
Yeah.
But at its heart, the film is a love story, and I wanted that to come across. And just the way Martin talks about Audrey, I find very moving. He kind of builds to that to the end, and then you really feel it, I think, at the end, that it's a real love story, and it's been a hard life, but Martin has stayed true to his love and his values throughout his life,
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of an example to live by, for me anyway. I always see it that way.
Yeah. He says at the beginning of the film that it was almost like a no-brainer for him to do this, to care for her as she was going through Alzheimer's, because of everything that she'd done for him and their marriage before. And that was one of the moments early on as I was watching the film where I was incredibly moved by him. And then you explained to us, as we move on in the early part of the film, about his childhood, say his background, the story about his dad trudging through the snowstorm to go see him in the hospital. I think that forms a lot of who he is, doesn't it? Yeah, that scene, especially in the snow, he says. His father said that the snowstorm was an omen in a way that foreshadow that he's going to have a rough life. Yeah.
So I thought that was an important scene to put up early to sort of like lay a clue to what's to come, Yeah. Yeah. And sorry, what were you saying?
Well, I was just going to say it's he talks about his mother as well, who was a significant person in history, to say the least. who I guess instills values in him that he carries today, doesn't he?
Yeah. You know, his mother and his father were huge influences in his life. And Martin Duckworth is very well known as a peace activist, especially in the anti-nuke movement of the 80s.
Yeah.
And so he has a lot of respect for women in general, I think, because of his mom and Audrey. And, it shows through the film.
There's so many beautiful scenes in the film. I was just telling you before we started, the scene where they go get a bird for the house.
Right.
And their daughter Jacqueline is supposed to, the bird's supposed to go in the cage, I guess, but it doesn't, and it flies around the house. It's such a beautiful scene, and you see them as a family, the three of them together. I was incredibly moved by that. I was also moved by the scene where Jacqueline presents the book of photos to her brother on his birthday. And the thing I noticed as I was watching the film, too, is that the only voice we really hear in the film, other than Jacqueline's, is Martin's. Was that deliberate? I mean, did you seek to talk to other members of the family, say?
Yeah, it was kind of deliberate. I wanted it to be kind of a monologue with Martin's voice tying the film together. I felt that would really bond the film, like be the glue of the film, and so that it would be just one voice coming through. And early on, I realized that the three main characters had to be Martin, Jacqueline, and Audrey.
Yeah.
And I did try to interview Audrey and get her to talk, but by the time I was filming, her illness had progressed to the point where she really couldn't talk very much. You know, it would be a word here, a word there. But, that's where I thought, again, trying to simplify things and not make a film that was a little too scattered with too many characters. I thought I'd just focus as much as possible on Jacqueline, Martin, and Audrey. Tension between them.
Because there is that for people listening to us. There's obviously great love, affection, care, but there is tension from time to time, isn't there? Yeah.
The thing is that Jacqueline, who has autism, lives in a group home a couple of hours north of Montreal, and there was a point when Audrey had to be moved to a special home for people with Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Jacqueline just decided to cut herself off from Audrey. She couldn't deal with it. It was too hard. And so, but then at that point, Audrey started asking, where's Jacqueline? She wanted to see Jacqueline and to get her to come to the home. And Jacqueline wouldn't come. So luckily, Jacqueline had great support at group home, and Martin also arranged a meeting with Jacqueline and Audrey just to resolve the situation.
Yeah. We see it in your film, Martin and Jacqueline talking and sharing their feelings. It's such a powerful dialogue between them, and an important discussion that I think a lot of people will learn from, I think.
Yeah.
And just great care and affection that you see, even though they're sitting apart from one another. You're seeing two adults talk to one another about things that they need to talk about, right?
Yeah, and they're really opening up and digging deep, and that scene was something that I kind of set up. I asked them to talk about it, and I find that when you're filming and you ask some people to talk about things, what might feel like you're setting up and is going to be staged, but it evolves into something real. Yeah. And it always ends up that way, or most of the time anyway. Yeah, it was one of the more touching scenes in the film.
And one of the great things that you do in the film is and I see the work that you do as a filmmaker, as a person, really, is the great care that you take in terms of showing us these terribly intimate moments of a life, a family's life, without seeming to be intrusive. I mean, I guess that was foremost in your mind as you were making the film, right?
Yeah, I was really, like I was saying, trying to be invisible in the room and as a filmmaker, and not have my presence felt either in the room while I was filming or in the editing, and be very sensitive to what was going on, and if it was a moment that I should stop filming or keep going, or help out. So it's about being aware and sensitive to the moment, and caring for the people you're filming.
Indeed. Did you try to make a film the way that he would have made it, say?
No, he's very easy and open. Like I said, I was showing him bits and pieces as I was editing or filming. And all in all, I was very lucky to make a film that I had really complete creative control, both from the producers who helped fund the film and from Martin. It really worked out well. There was one scene that he wanted in, and I didn't want it in. Yeah. It's a scene that ended up on the website, a little video on the website about a film that Martin and Audrey made together called No More Hiroshima. Oh, yeah. And I just thought that it would make the film too long, and it would have ended up in a part of the film where I didn't want to go back into the historical moments anymore. Right. And so as a compromise, I put it on the website, and I'm trying to get people to watch it there.
So people can go to dearaudrey.ca. It's a great website. There are marvelous resources as well there that you link to in terms of Alzheimer's. So other than in that part of the film, what has he thought of it?
Oh yeah, he really loves the film, and he's been coming to festivals with me.
Oh really?
And we do the Q&A afterwards. He just finds it a beautiful film.
Yeah, it is a beautiful film. It also makes us want to see some of his work again. How available is that in Canada in terms of, say, if you want to go to the public library, could you get his films or the NFB website, say?
The NFB website has a good number of his films, and on the Dear Audrey website, there's a page there that you can watch. You can link to all the films that are on the NFB website, and then there are a few others that are not associated with the NFB. So the Dear Audrey website has a page that you can find all of them that are available online in one place. So you can scroll through all of his films that are available online there.
It's a great resource, as I said. Jeremiah, this film touches the heart so deeply, if you will, as one watches it. As someone who has made the film, what are your thoughts about, say, this journey of life that we're all on, and once we get to the end, and I mean, did you learn something about yourself that you didn't know before?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I found that learning how Martin lives and Audrey lives their life, where they live true to their beliefs and they don't compromise that in any way. Yeah, that's really inspirational for me. It's a lesson, I learn every once in a while. Where when a parent dies or something, you realize, I have to be more understand how life is precious and be careful of my choices and live for the now. And I think that that's one of the things I got out from the film and working with Martin. And, I think that I hope people get that out of the film as well, essentially living for the present and take care of their friends and family around you.
Indeed.
Yeah.
It's such a gift to watch, because there's so many things to get out of it. By the way, the house itself is such a character in the film. It doesn't seem like a very big space, and so I guess that's why it was probably easy for you to bring a small camera in to work there. What is that room like, or what is that house like in terms of where he lives or where they live?
Yeah, I really wanted to develop the house as a character in a way and to build it that way throughout the film. And so, he lives in a very typical Montreal apartment, which most of the apartments in my neighborhood have crooked floors because they were built on faulty foundations. And so Yeah, he still lives there, and he promises to live there for the rest of his life.
Uh-huh.
And it's a house with a lot of charm and character.
Yeah, it's a marvelous place to look at. I'm not one of these people that watches these house shows on TV, but
oh yeah, me too.
I so enjoyed looking at his house and seeing the books on the beautiful shelves and the piano that's filled with stuff on top of it, yet sounds great when he plays, and the kitchen where they're both puttering around and getting lunch together. As you said, it's such a character itself that it's just enjoyable to watch. Are you working on another film now, Jeremiah?
Films of my own, I'm puttering around with some ideas, but now I'm working as an editor on a film called War on Science. It's for the CBC. It's an hour-and-a-half or 2-hour documentary about the idea of anti-vaccine or that kind of the history of that psychology of why people are rejecting science these days.
Well, we'll wait for that. I've become a fan of your work through Dear Audrey.
Okay.
And I worried about talking to you today because I was going to come to our interview with just a list of everything I liked about the movie, and we were going to talk about that for half an hour. But hopefully we've given enough for people listening to want to see the film, because it is a film that people deserve to see. So congratulations, Jeremiah, on it, and continued good luck with it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
The website for more is at dearaudrey.ca. The film is called Dear Audrey, and it is streaming as part of the Doxa Documentary Film Festival until this Sunday, the 15th of May. Go to dearaudrey.ca for more information on how to see the film later on. It is a Cineflex Media and National Film Board of Canada co-production. Jeremiah Hayes joined me on the line from Montreal and Vancouver. I'm Joseph Planta.